Hey, Heather.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. I'm well. How are you?
Doing great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Backyard Horse Enthusiast and sharing with our viewers everything that you are enthusiastic about in the equine industry, both as a professional barrel racer and someone who's been with Cargill, Nutrena Feeds for quite some time.
Oh, well, I do have to say, I'm not actually a professional barrel racer. I am an amateur.
Well,
But I professionally talk about Nutrena horse feeds.
okay, okay. Well, I do apologize for getting
That's
that wrong, but I'm still impressed. I've watched your runs
okay.
and they are amazing. Come on, what was one of the videos you sent? You had a time of like 15 point what, 3, 4 or something of that. Like it was
Yeah.
insane.
Yes,
That's
each
insane.
each different arena is different as far as what is a good time there. But yes,
Right,
I've had
right.
some few runs in the 15s in certain arenas, yes.
Dang, 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 dang. With that, I'm going to get started by asking my first question for you. And that is that your story includes a unique transition from being an English writer to a barrel racer. Can you share with us that evolution and how it came about and what drew you to barrel racing?
Yes, I grew up on a dairy farm in the Finger Lakes area of New York, and there was a riding stable down the road. So before I got my first horses, my father thought it'd be a good idea for me to get riding lessons. And I started riding lessons on English lessons on off the track thoroughbreds. And then about a year later, got the first couple horses of my own that we kept at the farm with the cows. And then I would ride down the road to the stable for my riding lessons and ride back home again. And so I did mostly English as a teenager. And then when I went to Cornell, I was on first the equestrian team and then the eventing team while I was at Cornell. But I think during my college years, I developed an interest in Western show clothing. So after I graduated from college, I wanted to have an all-around horse that would show both English and Western. I was very drawn to the quarter horse style of showing quarter horse breed shows. So with Nutrena, I was tasked with the work of going to and setting up a booth for Nutrena at breed shows at the New York State Fairgrounds, which was really great for me because after I graduated from college, I didn't own a horse at the time. So I was able to research all the different breeds and their style of competition. And that led me to the Appaloosa Club because the Appaloosa shows was very similar to the style of showing of the quarter horse breed shows, where you could show the same horse, English and Western, and have an all-arounder. And the people that I met there just welcomed me as family. I just felt very, very comfortable there. So I decided to buy an Appaloosa and then showed just English and Western. I did not do the barrel racing. But then when I had my daughters and I raised my daughters going to the Appaloosa shows for the walk trot division, if you wanted to get the high point, you had to do the English classes, the halter classes, the Western classes, and the game classes. So they did everything walk trot. And up through from the time they were, well, Callie started when she was 4, and both of them through age 10 in the walk trot division. But after they graduated out of the walk trot division and you start running barrels, then you need a separate horse. So it was at that point that we started having pleasure horses and game horses, and my daughters really got into the barrel racing, which led them to high school rodeo. And as teenagers, I just became the truck driver when both my daughters were in high school rodeo, and I drove them all around New York State. And then 3 different times they went to nationals in Wyoming. And after they graduated out of high school rodeo, that is when I looked and said, geez, I have 2 really nice barrel racing horses here. I should start barrel racing. So it wasn't until after my daughters graduated out of high school rodeo that I started barrel racing.
Wow, what a journey. Jeez. Amazing. Oh my goodness.
One of the other things that kind of attracted me to continue with the barrel racing is the NBHA, which is the National Barrel Horse Association, has a 50 and over division for their seniors. And in 2020, I was turning 50. And that was kind of the point where I really needed to, I was looking for a new goal. And I was turning 50, and NBHA had a 50 and over division. And so I knew that there were people who went to the World Championships. And it was at that point I made it a goal to go to the World Championships in the senior division.
Good for you. That was going to be my next question, was competing at the NBHA World Championships is a significant accomplishment. And why was that a goal for you? And what was this experience like?
Well, so it started as a goal in, I would say, January of 2020. And so it actually did not come to fruition until October of 2024. But in October of 19, I left my first marriage. I left my farm where I had my horses and in the backyard, and I taught riding lessons there as a 4-H leader. And I boarded my horses. I was living with my mother. And I was basically looking for healing and personal growth. And I needed a goal and I needed something to work on. So there were some setbacks along the way. So March of 2020, of course, everything shut down with the pandemic. And I should back up a little bit. My daughter's two barrel racing horses I had at the time, my older daughter's horse, Bailey, he was a push style horse, which was a really good style of horse for me to start out on, because being push style means he only runs as fast as you push him to. And so I started barrel racing on him and became comfortable with speed on that type of horse. He never actually went as fast as he went with my daughter, with me, but he did get faster over time. As I became more comfortable, he went faster. So that was a good way to start, because then my younger daughter's horse is a free runner. His name was Andy. And Andy goes the same speed, no matter who is on him, and he's going whether you're with him or not. And he was really fast. And so in 2020, I was turning 50 and Andy was 20. And we had been doing some small local races, and I was thinking about joining NBHA and doing some bigger races. And that's how I made it my goal. Unfortunately, in March of 2020, when everything shut down, about a week after the shutdown, he had a very severe colic, and we had to take him to Cornell for surgery. We did emergency surgery. He had a cancerous tumor that had grown around his small intestine, and there were 31 feet of dead intestine. And we had to make the decision whether to proceed with the surgery or not. And I think because it was an emotional time, because I had left my home and my farm, and I had set this goal, and he was still running his fastest times at 20 years old. I decided to go ahead and do the surgery. Unfortunately, 10 days post-surgery, we lost him.
Oh, so sad.
So that was really sad. And sad both for me and for my daughter. And because of the pandemic, we weren't allowed to go into the vet school, into the vet hospital to see him or be with him. So it was very, very sad. However, about 3 weeks, maybe even 2 weeks before Andy had his colic, I had actually purchased a 3-year-old. And I remember thinking, here I was paying board on my horses, and why did I need to go buy a 3-year-old? Well, at the time I had 3 horses, but they were all in their 20s. And I wanted to compete, and I had goals of competing at a higher level. And so I thought, all right, I need to get something younger to start bringing along. And then I felt like when we lost Andy, I felt like God knew that I needed this 3-year-old. And
Yep.
all of a sudden it became clear why I had the opportunity to buy this 3-year-old. So a friend of mine had broken this horse or had trained this horse as a 2-year-old. And so when I bought him as a 3-year-old, I sent him right back to her. And it happened to be where I was boarding my other horses. And she's the one who taught my daughters barrel racing lessons when they were young. So everything was falling into place. And as a 3-year-old, I took Edo to all of the races, but I didn't compete with him. We just exhibition runs. But he got the experience of hauling and stabling and the music and the announcer and everything without the pressure of actually competing.
Mm.
And so that was a great experience for him. And then as a 4-year-old, I started racing him and we did really well. However, he ended up developing EPM. And I was a little bit overwhelmed by it as far as all of the therapies required to really do right by the horse with EPM. And the woman who trained him really loved him a lot. And she really wanted to take on his case and she offered to buy him from me. And I don't normally sell horses. I usually, if I have a horse, I keep them. And I planned on keeping this horse for 20 years. So it was hard for me, but I felt like it was the best thing for the horse to sell him. And then he could get all of the medication and supplements and therapies and everything that he needed, and different veterinarians and therapists and medications and supplements. She was willing to do all of that, which really was scary and overwhelming for me. So I felt like it was the right thing to do for him, and he's doing very well now. But that led me on a search for my new horse, who is the one that you saw in the video. His name is Louie, Fast Water Dash. I actually found him on a listing on Facebook. He was in Kentucky. So I drove 10 hours to go take a look. It's kind of funny when I got there. I'm only 4'11", and I drive a big pickup truck. And when I got out of my truck, the woman who was selling him, she couldn't see me on the other side of my truck because I'm so short. And she looked around the truck and she says, "Oh, there you are." And the next thing she said was, "You saw in his ad that he's over 16 hands, right?" And I said, "Yes, I've had other 16 hand horses before." That didn't really scare me. But it is noteworthy. Everywhere I go, people say to me, "Wow, he's a really big horse." And he's a quarter horse, but he looks like a thoroughbred. And he's very fast, and he's a lot of horse. But he and I have been on a journey together. I've been scared of him for quite a while, and then I've slowly made a bond where there's some mutual respect and trust now that I'm not quite as scared of him as I used to be. And
what were the scary parts of him?
Well, he likes to, instead of being led nicely like a gentleman walking by my side, he would walk way ahead of me and drag me. He would sometimes get away from me and bolt around the property. Yeah, so he's just a big, powerful horse. So we did go to a clinic with Luke Reinbold that was a building confidence through horsemanship clinic, and that helped tremendously. Just within the first 2 minutes of working with Luke, we fixed the leading issue.
Wow.
So now he walks next to me and slightly behind me as a gentleman instead of walking in front of me. He doesn't get away from me anymore. That kind of thing. So,
yeah.
And I'm getting used to his speed, and I'm staying with him with his speed a little bit better. So, at one point there was an awards banquet where they said something about this girl has gone from being a 3D rider to being a 1D rider, and I said, "Not by choice."
Oh my gosh. You've quite literally been along for the ride.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
But it's wonderful because he likes what he does. He loves his job and he really wants to do it. I don't have to force him to do it. I have to allow him. It's more fun when I allow him to do what he wants to do. Because he's pretty good at it, as you saw in the video.
Sure. Yes, yes. Wow. Oh,
I just need to give him a little guidance and try not to interfere as much as I can.
he's like, I know what I'm doing. You just keep yourself in that saddle and we'll be fine. Wow, I love it. You've had quite the fascinating career path from working on a dairy farm to becoming a senior professional retail account representative for Nutrena. What inspired this journey and what's been the biggest milestones along the way?
Growing up on a dairy farm and then having horses, you can imagine I wanted to be a veterinarian. Who
Hmm.
doesn't, right?
Yep.
So I did very well in high school and got into Cornell. My family's dairy farm was at the other end of Cuba Lake from Cornell. So I was very used to going to Cornell for 4-H events. And also I used to ride in hunter shows at Cornell. So I was pretty familiar with Cornell. My father went to Cornell, and some of my mother's side of the family. And there's a long Cornell history. So I didn't even look at any other schools and went in pre-vet. And once I got to Cornell, I found out pretty quick, as well as I did in high school, it did not prepare me for college. So I was never challenged and I wasn't really prepared for college very well. So I decided, with the grades I was getting at Cornell, that I probably wasn't not going to get into vet school. And I kind of wish someone had taken me by the shoulders at the time and said, Heather, there's other schools besides Cornell Vet School where you don't have to have straight A's to get into vet school. Maybe to get into Cornell, you do. It is very hard. And I've actually gone through it now with my daughter. My daughter is a veterinarian. She went to Cornell undergrad and then she did her master's at Colorado State and she went to vet school at University of Minnesota. And now not only is she a veterinarian, she's actually a neurosurgeon. So I'm living vicariously through my daughter.
Absolutely. And she had you as a role model and a mentor to guide her on this journey.
Yeah,
Imagine if
so
you had you
I'm pretty proud of that. And my
as
younger
well.
daughter is an agriculture teacher, so that makes me pretty proud
Oh
as
my
well.
gosh.
Yeah, they both kind of, follow what my passions are. So educating people about agriculture. And so anyway, while I was at Cornell, I kind of decided that I knew I wanted to stick with animal science, but not be pre-vet anymore. And my father had been very successful with expanding our dairy farm, and it was a very large, profitable dairy farm. Still is today. And I kind of saw the stable down the road is that, I didn't see them building new barns and getting new tractors like we were on the dairy farm. So when you think about it, cows make milk, you ship the milk, you get a check for the milk. With horses, you don't have that kind of cash flow.
They're consumers.
So because of that, I thought that the responsible thing to do would be dairy be my career and horses be my hobby. And I used summer internships to really figure out what I wanted to do for my career. My first summer, I milked cows on a large farm. And there were a lot of sales reps that stopped by that farm. And at that time, I thought, oh, maybe instead of being the farmer, maybe I want to be a sales rep who calls on farmers. And so then this summer between my junior and senior year at Cornell, I did a summer internship with Cargill, which is the company that I work now. Cargill owns the brand Nutrena. And it was as a dairy rep. And I'm going to date myself now. This was the summer of 1991. And at that time, the upstate New York part of Cargill that sold dairy feed and sold all kinds of feed, they didn't have an equine specialist. So they were asking their dairy reps to sell horse feed. And, a lot of dairy guys don't really like horses. And if you're a horse person,
A burner.
you're not gonna buy horse feed from somebody or take advice on horse feed from somebody who doesn't know anything about horses. So that summer, at the end of the summer, they said, okay, Heather, you know cows and you're good with cows, but you really light up when you talk about your horses. And I said, well, yeah, I'm a self-proclaimed horse crazy girl. That's all I ever think about is my horses. So even though up until that point, everything I had taken in college was all dairy. So they gave me a job offer to be an equine specialist. When I went back to Cornell for my senior year, I had this job offer, and I started taking some horse classes as much as Cornell has, and got to be real good friends with Dr. Skip Hintz. He, if you've ever read a book on horses, and there's a chapter on nutrition, it was probably written by Skip Hintz. He has since passed on now, but he was very well known throughout the industry for his research in equine nutrition. So I got to be real good friends with him, took his class. He became a mentor to me. And then even after I went to work for Cargill, he asked me to co-author articles for him, like for a physician's desk reference for veterinarians, things like that, to kind of draw on my experience within the feed industry along with his equine nutrition. So that was really good. So I actually, as a senior at Cornell, I interviewed with a bunch of different companies and farms, and then ultimately decided to go with my first job offer, which was with Cargill. And I remember one of my first assignments, they needed people to help work at the booth at Quarter Horse Congress. And I said, wait, you're gonna pay me to go to Quarter Horse Congress? Yes. So now
Yeah.
it's 33 years later. I'm still working with and I worked in the Nutrena booth at Quarter Horse Congress this year too.
Oh, and Equine Affair, which is where we met. But now, when you mention that you started with Cargill in 1991, I'm sure our paths crossed. I remember going to one of the Nutrena's year-end awards banquets in upstate New York somewhere. I can't remember where, with Shagbark. Then they were
Oh,
Shagbark Farm and Lumber, or Shagbark Farms
okay.
Supply that I worked for. I was in their livestock department. I handled all the buying of feed,
Oh yeah.
livestock feed, and that. So we were winning an award. John Lyons was a speaker there.
Oh yeah.
So I'll bet our paths crossed way back then. Like Tiffany was there. It's just, can you imagine all these decades have gone, 3 decades have gone by, over 3 decades already?
Yes.
That's
That's crazy.
insane. That is insane. Oh my
You
God.
talk about Equine Affair. The first year that I went, the first year they even had Equine Affair, I was not there with Nutrena because we actually had a separate district then. It was a different group of salespeople.
Okay.
However, I brought my 4-H club there. And I remember the year specifically because my older daughter was 3 and my younger daughter was in utero.
Oh
So
my
I was
gosh.
pregnant with Callie and Lauren was 3 and I brought we had like 30 kids in our group. And it was the first year that they ever had Equine Affair. And they did not plan, I don't think they prepared well enough for the amount of people that were going to come because I remember they didn't have enough seating at the seminars and they didn't have enough food vendors. And it was kind of crazy. But I did talk with the people who worked in the Nutrena booth that year, but I was in a different group of salespeople at that time. And so, but I have worked at it almost every year since.
That's insane. Oh my
So that
gosh.
would have been 1998 because Callie was born in February of 99.
Unbelievable. What a
And there are
passion
certain
to have.
people that I do see in the Nutrena booth every year at Equine Affair. Definitely. And even though I'm from central New York, I see a lot of people out there in Springfield, Massachusetts that I know locally.
What a wonderful world
I love that event. It's one of my
this.
favorites.
Yeah. Uh, so in your 30 years in the equine industry, how have you seen horse feeds evolve to meet the needs of modern equestrians and their horses? Like, I mean, they really have evolved. I think back, I started using Nutrena feeds in the 80s.
Yeah.
I remember when it was just, we just buy a bag of sweet feed, 12% sweet feed, and my dog food was Nutrena dog food. And now it's just, you got have all the safe choices, and there's so many, the enhancers and the top lines, and there's so much to choose from now. It's so wonderful. It's like going to a restaurant. It's just more, I love it. So tell
Well,
us about this.
and you can imagine with me, having been pre-vet at Cornell, I'm very science-based in my thinking. And that's one of the things that I love about Cargill is a very scientific company and does a lot of research. And we have a research farm in Elk River, Minnesota, and different research facilities, actually PhD people around the world. And so there is a lot of technology that has been put into our horse feeds that make it much different than it was 30 years ago. I remember when I first started, the highest fat horse feed on the market was 3% fat. So today, our best selling horse feeds are 8% fat, and we have some popular feeds. ProForce Fuel is 13% fat, and Power Boost is our fat supplement that's 22% fat. But some horse people know, and if you were a 4-H'er in hippology, you definitely know. But many people don't know that the reason we thought horses couldn't utilize fat in their diet is because a horse does not have a gallbladder. So it was thought for many years because they didn't have a gallbladder that they couldn't utilize the fat in their diet. However, we now know today that the horse's liver takes over that function and they actually can utilize fat in their diet. So that was kind of one of the first things I think that when I started that we started seeing increased use of corn oil and soy oil. At one point, some companies were using animal fat in their horse feeds. However, like there is there's an organization called AFCO, with the American Association of Feed Control Officials, that says that we only want vegetable ingredients in horse feeds, no animal products in horse feeds. So we really don't want to be using animal fat. Is not as digestible for a horse as corn oil or soy oil would be. We can also get fat from rice bran or flaxseed. So those ingredients started becoming more popular as well. But I think one of the biggest, what I would say, evolutions of horse feed is where the calories are coming from. And if you think about 200 years ago, Cargill actually started in 1865 as a grain elevator where they bought corn from farmers and then sold it for whether it was for food or for feed. So farmers would grow corn and oats and sell it to the feed mill, right? And then the feed mill would start every formula with corn and oats. So for hundreds of years, we've had horse feed formulas that the foundation of the formula was corn and oats. Well, where does the calories come from in corn and oats? It comes from carbohydrates, which is starch and sugar. And starch can get broken down to more sugar. And then if you made a sweet feed, what'd you do? You had corn and oats and you threw molasses on it for even more sugar, right? Okay, now in contrast, let's think about what is a horse designed for? Think about horses out in the wild. They take a bite of grass and a few steps, and a bite of grass and a few steps all day long. So their digestive tract is designed for small amounts, they're grazers, right? For small amounts over the whole day, and mainly a fiber source. So their digestive tract is set up to get their calories from fiber, which is why when you think about a horse's digestive tract, their fermentation vat is in the hindgut versus a cow whose fermentation vat is in their stomach. So it's kind of flip-flop because a cow is supposed to eat a lot and then go lay down and chew their cud. Whereas a horse needs to stay on their feet and they're going to graze a little bit, take a few bites all day long. Okay. So that's why their digestive tracts are different. So, okay, what are the problems that horse people are concerned about? There's three main ones, I say, the three biggest fears of horse owners. Number one, we don't want them to colic. Number two, we don't want them to founder. And number three, we always say, is this going to make my horse crazy? So all three of those things go back to starch and sugar, carbohydrates, starch, and sugar. Okay, so if we're going to address the concerns of horse owners, why are we starting our feed formula with corn and oats? And if we're going to come up with a solution and we take a look at what the horse's digestive tract is designed for, it's designed for fiber. So we were the first one, Nutrena was the first one to actually come out with the product Safe Choice. It revolutionized the horse feed industry. Where we said, okay, instead of starting our formula with corn and oats, we are going to start our formula with fiber ingredients. So whether it's alfalfa meal, wheat midds, beet pulp, oat hulls, soy hulls, but those are all great. Those are going to be very, very safe for the horse. You reduce your risk of colic, you reduce your risk of founder, you keep the horse quieter. Well, fiber's great, but that's what they get from their hay and their grass. It just doesn't have a lot of calories. So to provide a solution to that issue, we add fat. So the whole idea behind Safe Choice and why it is a safe choice is because we started the formula with fiber ingredients and then we added fat to it for calories. So our calories are coming more from fat and fiber and not as much from carbohydrate, starch, and sugar.
Beautiful. Well, I can tell you my gelding, he has Cushing's. It's on percent every day. He loves the Safe Choice Senior, like licks his bucket clean, which he wasn't doing with the competitors. I tried a competitors for a while because everybody was, woohoo, this is great, great, great. But he was walking away from his bucket. It was not as palatable and it was more money.
Yeah.
And he would watch, and I'm like, oh my God, you didn't finish. Why won't you finish? The Safe Choice Senior, it even has a fresher, vibrant, it's, oh my gosh, I want to crawl in the barrel with it. It smells so good. And I'm like, no wonder why you lick your bucket clean. He's done so well on it. And I have to be ever so mindful, of course, of starches, excess starches and sugar. And I want more of a forage-based diet for him. And this is keeping his top line perfect, keeping him in a good weight, and he's happy, so happy.
I'm really glad to hear that. You mentioned top line, so that's another technology that has evolved over the years as well. So when you look at a feed tag, the first thing that's guaranteed in the guaranteed analysis is protein. One thing that's a little bit different with us is we will also guarantee some of the amino acids that are the building blocks of protein. There are basically 10 different essential amino acids. And as the horse is pulling protein out of their diet, they have to pull a package of all the 10 essential amino acids. So you make up 10, pull a block, 10, pull a block. If one of those runs out, that is called the first limiting amino acid. They can't make the block anymore, so they can't use any more of the other amino acids. So the one that runs out first is lysine, and second is methionine, and third is threonine. So what we have done is we actually put supplemental lysine, methionine, and threonine in the feed. And by doing that, it helps the horse utilize all of the amino acids that are in the feed. And it improves the efficiency of how they utilize their protein. So they can get more protein out of their diet. What does that mean? That means they can muscle up better. What does that mean? That means they have a nicer top line. What has happened over the years? So we talked about fat, right? And how the fat levels have gone up over the years. So usually the amount of feed that people give to their horses will be determined by how they can see ribs or not, right? If you see ribs, you're going to give them more grain. If you don't see ribs, you're going to give them maybe same or less grain. And as fat levels have gone up in the horse feeds, your calories per pound has gone up. As your calories per pound has gone up, you actually can feed less grain. Okay. So if we're feeding less grain, but the percentages of protein in the grain are very similar, but we're feeding less of it. Now we're not giving our horses enough protein. You will notice that the higher fat feeds tend to be 14% protein and not 12. It's for that reason. We still find sometimes there are people who insist, oh, I can't have 14, I have to have 12% protein instead of 14. It's the amount of protein your horse gets is the amount of feed they get times the percentage of protein. So it depends on if you're feeding a lot and you're feeding a 12, that's fine. But if you're feeding a small amount and you're feeding a 12, they're not going to get enough. So that's why you'll notice a lot of the newer feeds with the higher fat levels are 14% protein.
Wow.
But what we also need is we also need to have the amino acids balanced. So it's not just the quantity of the protein, but it's the quality of the protein.
Sure.
So what happened over the years as the fat levels went up? We ended up with these fat horses with poor top lines because we were getting enough calories, but they weren't getting enough protein, which is now why we have people talking about top lines and how we need to make sure we get good quality protein by getting the right amino acid balance so that we have good top lines.
Wow. Love it. Makes sense. Oh, well, we are thrilled. Dakota and I are thrilled with the results of Safe Choice Senior for him,
And
and I'm sorry.
I
Oh
was going
no,
to say,
I feel comfortable. I mean, he's my baby, right? I'm gonna stress over. I do. I actually had a fellow equine friend say, "My God, you are a worrywart when it comes to this guy,"
we
and I'm
all
like,
are. They're our babies.
want to make sure I'm doing everything right by him. And this truly feels so right because of the results that I'm seeing and the fact that he gets to enjoy something, having Cushing's and some things being a little more limited for him now, right?
Yeah.
It's just so nice to be able to give him something he loves and that's doing really good by him health wise. So,
Another new technology that has come along that didn't used to be in horse feeds is the use of prebiotics, probiotics, and now postbiotics that we're putting in. And, we all hear the TV commercials for ourselves for Dan Active or Activia yogurt, and what good the probiotics can do in our body. But think about the horse and the amount of fiber that they eat. Okay. And I mentioned the fermentation vat that they have in their hindgut, that's how the fiber gets digested. And that happens by good microbial populations.
sure.
So it's way more important in the horse than it is in us, really, for the amount of fiber that they need to break down and get the nutrition out of. And that's something that Nutrena has always been very big in. And I do want to say, and I talk about these higher fat levels and amino acids and prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. They're not in all of our horse feeds because all these things cost something, but you do see results from them. So if you're buying the cheap economy feed, it's not going to have these bells and whistles. The midline feed may have some of them in some amount, and then your premium feed, like Safe Choice, is going to have more. And then we also have super premium feeds like Proforce. So it kind of depends, I'm talking about all these technologies. They're not in every feed, and not every
Yeah,
company believes in all of these technologies either.
right.
We had a competitor who used to say that they didn't use prebiotics and probiotics in their horse feeds because there was no proof that it worked. And as a result of that, we actually found uh, some master's graduate students who needed a project, and at Texas A&M, they did a project together with us where we compared geriatric horses on senior diets with prebiotics and probiotics and without. And we actually saw a response that they got 15% more calories out of their hay when fed a senior feed with prebiotics and probiotics in it.
Wow.
Yes, because it just it helps the microbial populations of the hindgut so much that they're able to digest their hay better.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and you're gonna pay for it if you think, buying cheap, inexpensive, run-of-the-mill, no pun intended, kind of feeds is the way to go. You're gonna pay for it in other ways, right?
Right.
Like you said, here you are, here I am using Safe Choice Senior, which I think, I'm sorry, I don't go to the grocery store and fill up my grocery cart with Lay's potato chips. Sorry, Lay's. Or you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
No, no. Whole foods, good foods, Greek yogurt, all those things so that I can utilize correctly for good health.
And be
So
healthy. Yes.
ask me when the last time was I got sick. Forever ago.
Right. Yep.
I'm
It makes a
61
difference.
years old. I eat well. And,
Yeah.
that's my preventative therapy is eating whole foods that are good for me and having an active lifestyle. So my horse gets the best. I'm going to give him the best. Why? Because he did see the vet 3 months ago when he had suspensory desmitis because he was being an idiot playing in the
For
pasture
his
with his
age.
friends. Yeah, yeah, for 20. We always he doesn't know he's 20.
Right.
He's still jumping the fence to get in and out on his own. And it's not a short fence, like this horse will jump anything. Um, but the vet is out there for our, every 6 month kind of thing and dental and sheath cleaning and that kind of thing and vaccine. It's not, okay, yes, he has Cushing's, but
That's part of age as well.
I mean, he's like a 70-year-old. But yeah, I'm just so pleased that I switched back. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I went along with, some of what other people were feeding in their barns, and this just made such a difference for
Yeah.
him. I'm so thrilled. And I don't have to feed a lot. I mean, yes, he's a fairly easy keeper, but I think he gets a pound of it in the morning, literally, and a pound at night. Plus, he gets free choice hay.
Uh-huh.
So he's always got hay, but it's perfect, perfect for
Another
him.
newer technology that we have, like with my horse, when I was traveling with him, or I travel, he's in regular training. We travel for competition. Of course, traveling to Georgia is stressful, right? So
Yes.
we always worry with horses that are stressed about ulcers. And in the Safe Choice feeds, we started putting in a marine sourced calcite, which is a form of calcium that will buffer the stomach acids. So it actually raises the pH to reduce your risk of ulcers. So that's another new technology that's not always been in horse feeds.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you. Because it pops up everywhere all the time. Ulcers, ulcer. And yeah, you know that. Once you put your horse on a trailer, you're looking at that as quite a
Yeah.
high probability of happening. So I love that. This is preventative therapy in the feed.
We use it as
Awesome.
an ingredient in the premium feeds, but then also we sell it as a separate supplement as well, Empower Digestive Balance. So if you wanted to give like a little cup of it before they got on the trailer
Yep.
or before a competition, or added on top of another grain that maybe didn't already have that ingredient in the feed, you could do that as well.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah.
Nutrena does supplements as well?
So we have a line called Empower. There are three
Yep.
supplements in the Empower line. Empower Boost is a 22% fat extruded nugget made mostly from rice bran and flax. So if you can see ribs, then you could add Empower Boost to anything and increase the fat level. Then we have Empower Top Line Balance. And Empower Top Line Balance is more for the opposite. It can be used two different ways. For a horse that isn't getting, like, if I was to say to someone, oh, what kind of grain do you give your horse? And they say, we have so much good grass, we don't even feed grain. Well, okay, that means you're getting enough calories, but are you getting enough protein and vitamins and minerals?
Right,
So the
right.
Empower Top Line Balance is a diet balancer. So it's 30% protein, and then it has all the vitamins and minerals. but it also has the prebiotics, probiotics, all the supplemental amino acids, and the marine source calcite is all in there. So for a horse that maybe doesn't really need to get grain because they don't need calories, you could feed them a little bit of that twice a day. Maybe the other horses are getting grain and they need something. And that would fulfill their needs, their nutritional needs that way. But you could also use Empower Top Line Balance on top of any other feed to add in those extra supplemental amino acids
Mhm.
to improve the muscling and top line.
Well, when I was feeding this other competitor senior feed, quite popular one, I was using the top line balancer.
Yeah,
Is it right? But
yeah.
now that I'm feeding, and tell me, maybe I'm not doing this right. He's getting the Safe Choice Senior now. Does he need that top line balancer too, or no?
Well, I mean, looking at him should tell you the answer to that question.
No, no, he's that's why I didn't. I'm
Yeah.
like, I think you're doing quite well on the Safe Choice Senior, so we're gonna leave it at that. But yeah, using that other one, which I might add was much more expensive. Okay. I still added the top line balancer to it, the
If you
Nutrena
felt
top
like
line.
you needed that.
Yeah.
And that brings up another difference between 30 years ago and now. So there's always been a very well accepted body condition scoring scale out in the industry from 1 to 9, 1 being very skinny and 9 being obese. And that measures how, like, if they need more or less calories in their diet. We actually were part of developing a grading for top lines that's A, B, C, or D based on if you can start with like how round their hindquarters are around the tailhead. If their hindquarters are hollow, that's not good. They're losing muscle. We want them to be muscled nice and round. And then the amount of muscle over their loin region, whether you can see the backbone sticking up or not. And then, of course, around the withers. And that's where everybody usually sees if the withers are really sticking up, that there's no muscle around there. So yeah, there's a grading system, A, B, C, or D. So now, in the grading system for top line grading is whether they need more protein in their diet or not. So if they're an A, then they have a very nice top line. A D has a hollow hindquarter.
Gotcha.
And that isn't that they can have all the calories in the world and have lots of fat cover over their ribs and still be a D
Yep.
if they don't
Yep.
have adequate muscling.
Sure. And we've seen plenty of those cases too. Now, like the Nutrena website, do they offer this as education to people? How can people get more information?
Yes, we actually the Empower top line balance. Well, not just Empower, but so this is kind of a funny story too. We came out with a marketing campaign called Top Line Balance because to tell the story of the amino acid balancing technology that we have in our feeds to improve muscling and improve top line. At that time, that product that's now called Empower Top Line Balance, it wasn't called that then. It was called Empower Balance because it was a diet balancer. And we came out with this marketing campaign because the technology, the top line balance technology is in the Safe Choice feeds and it is also included in Empower Balance. But if people were looking for like a solution to help them fix a poor top line, we had a website where you could go through and you could score your horse and then it would give you feeding recommendations. And it always came up with Empower Balance. And basically all of the chatter online, all of our consumers and horse owners started calling it Empower Top Line Balance. And our sales went up like crazy. We decided to change the name and add the word top line because it was working so well for people
Sure.
that we decided to market it that way.
Sure. And that was years ago. What drew me to the top line balancer was that it was someone at Tractor Supply back then who said, this is what, because I had an aged gelding who, his body score everywhere else, as you said, not ribby or anything, but his top line just was lacking. And she was like, I swear by this, get it. And that's when I started with it and saw such a drastic improvement that it's always been a part of my feeding protocol.
So yes, if you do a search, you can find a website where we have how it tells you how you can grade your horse's top line, and then it gives feeding recommendations based on that.
Okay, now is this Nutrena's?
Yes.
Okay, so perhaps you can email me that link, the
Okay,
website link. Could you do that? And then I'll put it in the description box for our viewers so they can do this themselves.
sure.
Awesome. I know they'll love it.
And I think
All
you
right.
can do it right through the Nutrena website as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. I've been out there, but sometimes I'm just so focused on something that I'm
Yes.
specifically looking for that I'm not, you know, checking things out. Pardon me while I look at my notes. So safety is always a priority in horse care. How does Nutrena ensure the safety and quality of its feeds? And why is this so important?
Yes. Well, I mentioned that Cargill started as it's actually still owned by the Cargill family, started as a grain elevator in 1865 in Iowa, where they would sell, buy corn from farmers and sell it, whether it was for feed or for food ingredients. So Cargill today has evolved in into a very large, it's one of the largest companies, privately owned companies in the world, and certainly as an agricultural company. Cargill deals more with food ingredients than it does with feed ingredients or feeds. So the whole theory of how Cargill approaches safety in our horse feed is actually based more on food safety rather than just feed safety. So that's at a higher level, right? All of our feed mills, we go by a program called HACCP. And HACCP was actually developed in the 1980s by Pillsbury at the request of NASA, because NASA wanted to make sure that any food that the astronauts took into space wouldn't make them sick. So they had to have the absolute highest level of safety to make sure that. And so this program that Pillsbury developed for the food industry became widely adopted. And Cargill uses it not only in our food facilities, but in our feed mills as well. So HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. And it's basically a series of checks and balances all throughout the system, from getting the ingredients to making the feed to testing the feed when it's finished, all the way through. So we may, when a load of ingredients comes into our feed mill, before it can be unloaded, we take samples from the load and it has to pass certain tests. And if it doesn't pass those tests, it doesn't get unloaded into our mill. We will reject loads. And Cargill actually has a reputation for rejecting loads. And we also have a 3 strikes and you're out policy with our suppliers, that if we reject a load from you 3 times, we're never going to buy from you again. So basically, don't send crappy ingredients to our feed mills.
What would they consider like a crappy ingredient?
Well, and I don't want to give, like, I'm not the one who does the testing, but each different ingredient. So we have a person that's their job when, whether it's a tractor trailer load or a rail car comes into our mill, that there's like a little room off to the side of the unloading area. And each ingredient has different tests depending on what the ingredient is. But for example, corn needs to be put under a black light. And if corn glows under a black light, it means there's mold inside the corn that we can't see. And those molds produce toxins that can make animals sick. So that's an example
Yeah.
of, something that we would reject. But there's
Okay.
other things as well. So like I said, each ingredient has their own series of tests they have to pass before it can be unloaded into our mill.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome
And
to hear.
then when we make the feed, afterwards, we have a testing laboratory at our research farm in Elk River, Minnesota. So all of the ingredients that come into the mill, we overnight samples to Elk River for testing to verify the nutrient content. So when we actually do our formulas, it's based on the actual nutrient content of that ingredient that is in the mill at the time, not book values, because they can vary. So we call that verified nutrient formulation.
Gotcha.
And then when there's a finished product, we also overnight samples of finished products to our lab in Elk River, Minnesota, to test those to finished products to make sure they're coming up with exactly what we say is supposed to be in there too.
Wow.
We have a lot of checks and balances. But another kind of hot topic on safety, especially horse feed safety, is ionophores. So there's two main ionophores that are very popular in the dairy industry and beef industries, Bovatec and Rumensin. And if you use Bovatec or Rumensin in, say, a calf starter or a heifer grower or even lactating dairy cow feed, it makes it so that in the digestive tract of a cow, when you're breaking down your feeds into pulled nutrients out, some goes towards good nutrients and some of it goes towards waste products. And if you have an ionophore in there, it makes more of it go towards the good products and less towards the waste products. So basically it can, well, in calves, it prevents coccidiosis. It keeps them healthy. In heifers, it helps them grow faster. And in lactating dairy cows, it helps them make more milk. So as you can imagine, the dairy and beef industry would like to have ionophores in their feeds. However, ionophores are toxic to horses.
Mm.
So Bovatec, you'd have to feed a decent amount of Bovatec over time to kill a horse, but it will kill a horse. However, Rumensin is extremely dangerous. Rumensin, tiny bit. I'm talking speck of dust, tiny bit. One time, dead horses. Okay. This is really dangerous. And when you're dealing with a feed mill, you can have a little bit get hung up in a corner of a pipe somewhere, or you could have human error. You running one or two feeds at the same time and they get mixed together accidentally. That's reality. So what Cargill has done is we have enough different feed mills that we have actually segregated our feed mills. So if we are making dairy feeds with ionophores in a mill, we do not make horse feed in that mill. And if we are making horse feed in a mill, we do not have any ionophores in that mill. So for me personally, in the geography that I sell horse feed in, all of our feed is made in Albany, New York. Now, we have other dairy feed mills, Salem, Governor, Liverpool, Batavia. We have all these other feed mills around that make all the dairy feeds, but we make the horse feeds in Albany. So that's something that's really important for people to know, is that we have the ionophore-free mill raises the level of safety, because with social media these days, there are other feed companies who accidentally may have ionophores get mixed in with their horse feed. There was a tragic story recently that killed a lot of horses. And immediately people will say, oh, that company makes dairy feed or beef feed, any kind of cow feed. Maybe they mixed something in and that's what killed your horse. Unfortunately, we have a lot of older horses these days. Horses are they're outliving their teeth. They're
Yeah.
living to be a lot older. And we sell a lot of senior feed because of that. But eventually horses die. And unfortunately, a lot of people look to the feed as the first reason, like why somebody says, oh, my horse was on senior and it died. And they say, ooh, my horse was on senior and it died too. Well, you know what? Senior horses eventually are going to die. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with the feed. And then other people chime in and say, oh, well, they make beef feed too, or they make dairy feed too. They make cow feed. So it must be they got some rumensin in your horse feed. Well, I just want to say that with us, there's no possible way that can happen.
Good to
If
know.
you have an ionophore free milk.
Yep. Yep.
So
That totally safeguards. You're good. You're covered,
yes.
Very
And not
smart.
every feed company has the number of feed mills to be able to do that.
Right. Right. But then you're playing Russian roulette, really, you
There are
know.
some safeguards that they can put in place. They will sequence the order in which they make the feeds so that say they don't make a horse feed right after they make a feed with rumensin in it, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Or they may have two separate lines and only
Mhm.
run, ionophore feeds on one line and not another line.
Mhm.
Um,
But as you said, sometimes there's human error, right? It
yes.
happens. It does happen. But with Nutrena, it can't.
Right. I do need to take a quick break to let my dog in.
Oh, please do. Please do. I'll be right back too.
Hmm. Hmm.
I forgot to put my recording in progress sign on the outside of my door, and I
Oh,
noticed my friend Ann from Horsepower Farm is visiting her mother next door.
ah,
And usually she'll stop in to say hi when she comes
right.
out this way. Oh my gosh. All right, I've got more. I've got so many for you, so many
Well, as you can
questions.
tell, I could talk all day.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you are educating so many people, including myself. I love this. And I love to be reconnected with Nutrena too. So when I saw you at Equine Affair, I was like, oh, and then Tiffany's still there, and what? And oh my gosh. And then I went to the Shagbark Christmas party at the beginning of December
Oh,
and saw Fred and Jessica, who worked for Shagbark for years. We worked there together when it was just four of us. Now it's huge.
okay.
But Nutrina was a big part of our lives. It was a big part of my life, you
Yeah.
know. I
So
ran
Tiffany
the,
now has since retired.
oh, she did.
Yep.
Oh, when I mentioned it to Freddie, he was like, gosh darn it, I should have called Tiffany and invited her and I think she's got a husband,
Yep.
her and her
Yep.
husband. Yeah, that's Freddie. He always waits till the event, the night of the event, and he remembers things. He's so cute. Oh, love him. Oh, so you've had a connection to agriculture since you were a little girl, little. And so, how did your experience in agriculture shape your passion for educating other people about animals and nutrition?
It's kind of interesting. My grandfather is the one who started our family's dairy farm, and he loved to collect antiques. And not only did he start the dairy farm, but he also started a John Deere dealership. O'Hara Machinery is still going today.
My gosh.
And so as when he started the farm, he actually started with horses. And my grandmother did quite a bit of the farm work with horses as well. There's a story that he always used to tell about she was out mowing hay with a team of horses and they got into a bee's nest. And my grandmother was 4'11" like me. Not a big woman as far as, having a runaway team of horses with bees chasing
Oh
with a
my
blower.
gosh. Imagine, can you just see it?
And today that farm is milking 2,200 cows. So yeah, it's crazy to think about how they started and still has a John Deere dealership going as well. But my grandfather used to, when he was visiting farmers, he would look at old stuff that would be like in a hedgerow somewhere and realize there was a lot of agricultural equipment that was actually manufactured in Cayuga County, which is where our farm was located in the Finger Lakes area of New York. And so he would ask people if he could take it if they weren't, if they weren't using it anymore. And so he had a barn full of junk, kind of.
Not to him.
And right. He was in the early 70s, he was on the Cuba County Board of Supervisors because he was our town supervisor. And they decided to move the location of the county fair from Emerson Park in Auburn to Weedsport, New York. And when they did, there was an empty building. And my grandfather was on the Parks and Recreations Committee. And so he decided that he would take and set up a museum in this building. And it is still there today. And right before he passed in the mid 90s. And right before he passed, they renamed it from the Cuba County Agricultural Museum to the Ward O'Hara Agricultural Museum. And I have an aunt who's a retired teacher, and she helps lead school tours there today
Oh my gosh,
to help
Heather.
educate people, and children on how they did things, on farms in the past. So it's a pretty cool place. And and that's part of it. As a teenager, I was the Cuba County Dairy Princess
Mm.
and first alternate runner-up for New York State Dairy Princess. And as part of that, I used to go around to schools and I had a little cow puppet and I made it my goal to hit every kindergarten classroom in Cuba County and talk to little kids about why they should drink milk and where their milk come from. So did that. I used to go to farmer meetings and I would also stand in grocery stores and hand out cheese samples,
Oh my
which
goodness.
it's so funny that I did as basically during my senior year of high school led me to the job I have today working with feed stores. And I'll set up a table and I'll have samples of my feed and talk with people and it's very, very similar. I had no idea when I was a dairy princess that I was going to end up doing marketing, like I do today. But I enjoy it. I enjoy being in stores and talking with people and sharing my knowledge. And I was in 4-H as a teenager and really enjoyed 4-H a lot. So when I moved to where I raised my family in Hamilton, New York, I was introduced to the local 4-H horse leader, and she was kind of burnt out and ready to be done with it. And so I ended up becoming a 4-H leader even before I had children. So
Not
both of
surprising.
yeah, but both of my daughters were born into every other Wednesday night going to 4-H meetings and basically listening to me teach about horses. And I think one of my personal mission, I felt it was, is we had all backyard horse owners in our club. And that I wanted to make sure that these backyard horses were cared for properly and that their owners were educated. So every other Wednesday basically is 24 meetings a year. And there were certain meetings that I did every year. So every spring we did spring vaccinations. I always did a meeting every year on deworming. I always did a meeting every year on farrier, with a farrier, what the expectations are from your farrier. Um, things like that. There were basic horse care that I wanted to make sure every kid whose parents got them a horse in the backyard knew what to do. Because I learned that in 4-H myself. So growing up on a farm, you kind of get that anyway. You grow up with it, but you with horse people, you don't always have people who grew up a farm who end up with a horse in the backyard who don't know all that.
Yes.
Oh, and I forgot nutrition. We always did a meeting every year on nutrition.
I'm sure you did. I love it. I love it. It's so clear in speaking to you, Heather, that this is more than, a job for you. It's not a job. This has been a passion,
Yeah.
such a deep passion. I'm in complete awe right now. This is why I love doing these interviews. I knew when I met you at Equine Affair, I'm like, something special about this woman. I need to know more. And I'm just going to go ahead and stick my neck out and ask her. And I'm so grateful that you've agreed to do this, because your passion combined with your experience and knowledge is what every backyard horse enthusiast needs,
Well,
and
and I say too, when I introduce myself, and if I'm speaking at a seminar, I'll say, okay, I'm telling you that I have a degree in animal science from Cornell, but I'm also telling you about the horses I have at home to let you know that I scoop the feed and I shovel horse manure myself too.
yes, you do.
So you can speak and
Yes.
I compete. So and I've got horses in training and I take lessons. I truck my horses to lessons all the time now. And I'm very fortunate. I live in an apartment, but on a horse farm where I'm able to have my horses here with me. So that means I need a trailer for lessons.
Oh,
But I don't really like boarding my horses. I mean, it's kind of nice when it's really cold out in the morning. You don't have to get up and go out, but whoever you're boarding them with has to. Somebody has to feed them. But I prefer to have eyes on my horses twice a day, every day. Um, and even if I can't ride every single day, at least I know how slow or how fast they eat. I know um, how many piles of poop are normally in the stall in an overnight. Or I know, how they come to the fence or don't come to the fence when I go down to feed them if they're turned out, that kind of thing, which I feel like if they're boarded, I'm missing that. And I
sure.
really felt that with my daughters as well, because my daughters grew up with their horses right outside and
Mm,
backyard horses at home and they competed on the Appaloosa circuit against other kids their age who boarded their horses, and you could see a difference.
100%.
Maybe not in the ring, but you could see the difference outside of the ring as far as what was happening.
Mhm.
If you discussed a bit change with your trainer, and after the ride was over, the kids went back through the horse in the stall, and then they took off on their bicycle, versus my kids who went and got the bridle and got the new bit and they're switching the bit on the bridle and they're asking the trainer, do I have it the right way?
Absolutely.
That kind of thing.
Right. It's there's a horseman and there's a rider, they're two different things, right? And I agree. And for most of my life, I mean, even though I was born into horses, my father had a huge riding stable, boarding facility. When I was 4 years old is when I began.
Yeah.
But we were there doing all the chores, it wasn't just showing. Um, but I do see that, and most of my adult life I've had my horses in my backyard. It's only been recently that I don't. However, I've been fortunate enough to be able to board Dakota at a facility where three of us alternate all the barn chores.
Ah,
So it's wonderful. And the three of us work so well together and we're so aware of what's normal for each horse. And we're constantly with texting or calling, look, I think, Goose doesn't seem quite right, or he looks a little off. He might, I'm fortunate for that. And I didn't do it because it's not that I'm saving money by doing what they call rough boarding. It's not that at all. That's not the idea. I don't care. I don't care if it's $1,000 a month or 1,200, whatever. But to
yeah,
have this be my experience every single day, I can go to that facility every single day, and every other day I'm doing the feedings. I love it because, like
yeah,
you, yes, my eyes have to be on that horse
yes,
all the time. I know what's normal for him. So amen to that. That's why I'm called the backyard horse enthusiast, because I
exactly.
am a backyard horse enthusiast. And that's nothing against any of these boarding facilities. They have their place. Not everybody can have a horse in the backyard. However, there's nothing like getting up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning and brewing a cup of coffee and then getting your muck boots on and your gear and walking out your back door and the horses are I mean, it's heaven to me. That's like I hit the
I,
jackpot. I'm a
I feel you.
multimillionaire because I live in this.
Yep. And
Love it.
standing in the barn door watching the sunrise.
Oh yes.
Yep.
That's pure, that's living, that's joy.
Yep.
Joy. Oh, so here's to our next question.
Okay.
With your extensive equestrian background from running a boarding stable, you ran a boarding stable as a teen to competing in diverse riding disciplines, right? Am I right here? Do I have this right? What what's been your most rewarding moments as a horse owner and rider? The most rewarding moments out of all this experience? There's too
Oh
many.
boy. I'm very competitive. So I'm pretty goal oriented and competitive.
Really?
Yeah.
Shocker.
Um, in 2010, we decided, well, yeah. So one of the reasons I bought Appaloosas is because there were 5 big Appaloosa shows in Syracuse, New York, which was an hour from home and 12 minutes from my mother's house. So when the kids were little, we did bed and breakfast at grandma's. And you move horses into the stalls, at the state fairgrounds kind of thing. Um, we were getting nationally ranked just doing the 5 Syracuse shows. So there was one year that Lauren was like second in the nation, and at the last show for the year, and we decided there was a couple more shows in New Jersey, so we'd branch out a little bit and go to a couple more shows. And she ended up #1 in the nation, and
Wow.
it was like walk, trot, English equitation, I believe. So that got us the bug for chasing national titles. Yes.
Bet.
And so at one point, I think when she was 12, there was a 13 and under division that for barrel racing, she ended up like 5th in the country. And she's like, Mom, I think next year I could be #1 in the country. And she says, if we went to some of these other shows. And so we had to make a whole plan. We sat down and really mapped it out because financially it was going to be a stretch for me. So I stopped showing that year. And her sister, her younger sister, was allowed to go to the 5 shows in Syracuse. But then we went to 5 other shows that only Lauren went to. And she ended up #1 in the nation in a couple
Oh.
different classes that year. So that was pretty cool. But then I had to make the same deal with the younger sister. When you're
Mhm.
10 in the walk trot class, we'll do some extra traveling just with you, and your big sister can't go. So that year, it was that year was 2010. And the very first show of the year was in New Jersey, and Lauren wasn't supposed to be able to show that one. And she's like, Mom, I could be the groom. So I could always use help, right? And she's to the point now where
Smart.
she's a pretty good helper. So I said, okay. So we'll for going and helping, I'll let you ride in one class. And we had her barrel horse with us. So she went in barrels and she won it. And she ended up being undefeated that year in barrels. It was crazy. And I don't know if you know how they run Appaloosa barrels. It's a little bit different than regular barrel racing. So regular barrel racing, there's just one horse goes one at a time, like the videos you've seen, right? In the Appaloosa circuit, they run horse against horse, which means that there's 3 barrels at each end of the arena. And the start and the finish line is in the center of the arena. And there's a drag racing, like a stoplight, for drag racing, they have the light and it would go beep and the lights would light up and then beep again. And then you could cross the start line, which was on either side of the light tree. And so the horses run by each other They do first barrel, second barrel, and then they're doing third barrel at the opposite ends of the arena, and then they're running towards each other to on opposite sides of the light tree. And that's how Appaloosa barrels are done. So they set up brackets like a tournament style. And you run horse against horse, and like the winner of each race goes on and races again. So you actually run multiple times.
Whoa.
And that year, she was undefeated at every Appaloosa show that we went to. So that was supposed to be her younger sister's year to win a national
Oops.
title.
Oops.
And Lauren won it was like I think it was the 13 to 15 barrel racing. And we had another horse, our pleasure horse. His name is Zippy. I still have Zippy today. He's 20, well, as of tomorrow he'll be 25.
Oh,
Zippy.
Zippy.
And in 2010, he was number one in the nation in green hunter over fences. And Lauren rode him Lauren rode him in some of the classes and some of the shows I rode him because some of the shows Lauren wasn't with us. But yeah, he was number one in the nation in green hunter over fences that year as well. And Callie ended up number two in the nation, I think, in 4 different classes. We
Wow.
traveled all over. We did the 5 shows in Syracuse, and then there were 5 other shows like in the Northeast. And then because she was number 2 in the nation in so many different classes, we ended up going to North Carolina State Fair in December that year to see. But the girl who was beating her in most of it was also at that show too.
Wow, it was the show circuit, the show season that never ended.
Yeah, yeah. So that, that,
Wow.
and also like, so not only we're backyard, right? We're not, my kids are the ones who feed their horses.
Love it.
And they're not like the horses aren't with a trainer all the time. We use a trainer for coaching at the shows,
Hmm.
but we didn't keep our horses with the trainer.
Yeah.
We also didn't pay somebody to truck the horses to North Carolina. I was the truck driver, that kind of thing.
Ah.
But yeah, that year Lauren had the national title, number one in the nation with her horse and barrels. Zippy had number one in the nation for green hunter over fences. And then Callie ended up number 2 in the nation in 4 of her classes. So I ended up buying her a belt buckle for the said reserve champion on it. I felt so bad because her
Oh,
sister had all these other belt buckles
oh.
all the time she had been number one in the nation. But which interestingly, this year for Christmas, I got both of the girls a belt buckle holder because they both have belt buckles. And I'm getting a collection of belt buckles now that I have won that you hang it on the wall and it has like a section of a belt with the holes in it and you put the buckles on it. It's a way to display your belt
Oh, I
buckle.
love it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What memories you made with your daughters. And
Yeah.
also, I can't think of a better way to produce outstanding human beings.
Thank you. Well, another
Well,
thing that now that I think of belt buckles in a special moment is that when they were in high school rodeo, both girls ended up becoming rodeo queens. And their years overlapped because Callie was Miss High School Rodeo New York, and her reign was a school year, and Lauren was Miss Rodeo New York, and her reign was a calendar year. So, but there was a little overlap where they were both rodeo queens at the same time, which is an educational type of position because their part of their job is to educate the general public about rodeo and the Western lifestyle and the fact that we don't abuse our horses or the cattle in rodeo and things like that. Since they did encounter protesters at some of the rodeos.
I'm sure. I'm
So,
sure.
but that was also kind of a special time as well.
Oh,
At one point, Callie came to me and said, Mom, Kelly's the younger daughter. She said, I think I want to run for rodeo queen next year. And I said, okay. And I knew that meant going to Wyoming for the for the nationals, because that's where the national queen pageant is. So if she was our state queen, then she had to go to
Yeah.
Wyoming. So, but I had been to Wyoming before with my older daughter too when she was a senior. So I kind of knew what that trip entailed. And to prepare for running for Rodeo Queen, we went to a Rodeo Queen clinic with a clinician who runs the Miss Rodeo America pageant. There's a friend of mine who has a stable, and her daughter was Miss Teen Rodeo New York the year before my girls were. And she brought this woman from the national pageant out to her farm to do a clinic in horsemanship and modeling and speech and everything. It was a really great clinic. And the director for Miss Rodeo New York was at this clinic. And I said something about, oh, I need to call my older daughter because she's competing in a horse show today. She was on the team at Cornell. And the director for Miss Rodeo New York said, oh, you have an older daughter?
Uh-oh.
He was looking for people to run for Miss Rodeo New York. So Lauren at the time was a senior at Cornell and applying to vet schools. And she wanted to do it, but she felt like she might be too busy to do it. Um, and so actually when she ran, she was only a junior. Yes, when she ran, she was a junior at Cornell, but she was getting ready. She knew her senior year she'd be applying to vet schools and having to be doing interviews and things like that. So she thought she might be too busy to fulfill the responsibilities. So she waited till 4 p.m. on the last day of the deadline to apply. And she contacted the director and she said, has anyone else applied? And the answer was no. She says, well, as long as no one else has applied, I will do it. And she ran to Tractor Supply and bought a cowboy hat because she didn't have a cowboy hat at college with her. Because the team she showed on at Cornell was the English team, the hunt seat team. So she ran and bought a cowboy hat. She asked her roommate if she'd take a picture of her because she had to put in a photo. And at 5 o'clock on the last day, she submitted her application to become Miss Rodeo New York, and she did it. And then that summer, she was looking for a summer job. And now during this time, her younger sister has been doing a lot of rodeo, and we had been going to the Painted Pony in Lake Luzerne quite a bit. And so Lauren's looking for a summer job, and she went and she contacted Sean and Shanna Graham, who own the Painted Pony in Lake Luzerne, and said, you know, I'm pre-vet, I'm looking to add animal experience for my veterinary applications, and I've I've competed in rodeos at your place when I was at high school rodeo. And by the way, I'm Miss Rodeo New York. And they are stock contractors. They travel all over putting on rodeos. Plus, they have a rodeo twice a week at their place. So they said, yeah, we'll hire you for the summer. So she lived there for the summer. She traveled with them with the stock. So she was in charge of like the bulls and the bucking horses and the calves at these for she, doctored them during the day or helped with, taking care of them. And she'd travel with them on the road, loading animals on the big trailers and everything, took care of them while they were at the rodeos and at the home rodeo. Oh, and then during the time, like when it was time for the national anthem to open the actual rodeo, she'd go curl her hair and put makeup on and put on her fancy chaps, and she'd do the American flag and everything. And then after she'd get done with the national anthem, she'd have to go like load calves for the calf roping, and then she'd have to load the bulls for the the bull riding.
Put her makeup on and her hair curls.
Yeah.
Your girls are a chip off the old block.
Oh, thank you. So
Wow.
you mentioned when we talked about the belt buckles, that's what made me think because they both have very nice belt buckles from when they were rodeo queens.
Oh my
But that
God.
brings up a special moment too, the fact that they're both rodeo queens, because it's also like an agricultural advocate kind of position, which is
Sure.
passionate about as well.
Oh, I'm so moved. Oh. So you've been involved in youth programs, 4-H, FFA. How do you see these organizations influencing the next generation of horse enthusiasts? And why is this critical to the equine community?
Well, FFA and 4-H are very different. First of all,
Mhm.
I'll say I had a very good experience with 4-H growing up. And the competitive part, aside from just horse shows, there's the public presentations program in 4-H, and horse bowl competition and hippology competition are knowledge competitions. So that I think that's really good as far as because we may not have agriculturally focused education in the schools. So through those programs in 4-H, you can learn more, and also that helps contribute to, taking care of the animals the way they should be taken care of, right? So I think that's good. Now FFA is different because what 4-H is pretty much an all volunteer organization, except for your county cooperative extension agent. FFA is through school.
Mhm.
And you have an agricultural teacher who's your FFA advisor. And the events you might be able to, like, with FFA, they have career development events. So it's a little bit different than the 4-H horse bowl and hippology. So with FFA, it is a lot of there is quiz type events as well, but you have more of the public speaking, and there's job interview competitions, that kind of thing. Um, so in FFA is more about agricultural as a whole, I think. Um, and FFA is more focused on like feeding the world kind of theme going on. And developing the leaders that we need for the future.
Mhm.
So, which I think 4-H does a good job with leadership too. They're a little bit different. 4-H is more focused on projects, and FFA I think is more leadership development. So,
Gotcha.
in fact, FFA, if you don't know, stands for Future Farmers of America, but they have stopped calling themselves that. They are the FFA leadership organization because they don't want to limit themselves to youth joining just that are farmers. They basically
Gotcha.
want all youth to be able to join. It's really not just for farmers, but it is to develop the leadership, what we need for agriculture for the future. But as far as the backyard horse enthusiast goes, yeah, I mean, shoot, we need to preserve agricultural land to be able to have horses or to be able
Mhm.
to grow hay, that kind of thing. So it is a concern.
Excellent. Thank you.
I personally wasn't in FFA growing up, but my daughters were both very, very involved. So I have been involved as like on the advisory board for my daughters group. And then now they ask me to judge competitions, which I love giving encouragement to younger kids um, that yes, you're on the right track and this is really, really good. And maybe here's a couple things you could do better for your next level of competition.
Oh, love it. Love it.
And my younger daughter is now an agriculture teacher, and her certification is actually in high school biology. But the school that hired her because of her FFA background, because they wanted to start an FFA at their school, which they have done now. And she chartered a new FFA chapter for that school. And she teaches a variety of classes. She teaches biology, but she also teaches welding, horticulture, small animal care, pre-vet science.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You must be a proud mama. And
Yeah.
I know your daughters have to be proud of you too, clearly. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. I was never in FFA. I was in Pony Club and I dated the president of FFA in high school.
Oh, that was probably a pretty good guy to date then, because
He
usually
really was.
there's, yeah, usually the president of FFA is one of the good guys. So,
He really was. He ended up becoming a park ranger. John Molina. God, that was decades ago, and I still remember his name. Oh, why didn't I keep dating him? So, as a lifelong equestrian, undoubtedly you've had moments where horses have left a profound impact on you. Can you share a specific memory or a lesson from your own experience with horses that continues to guide you even today? Profound lesson.
I think there are two different horses that have really been super, super special. The one I mentioned, Lauren's horse Bailey, that she got the national titles in the Appaloosa Club. She also went on to be state titles in high school rodeo and took him to nationals in Wyoming. And then I started racing on. He was the one who was the push style horse, right?
Mhm.
So I taught riding lessons with him, and he did everything. He did Western pleasure. He did English. He Lauren's last year in 4-H was the only year that she and her sister were in the same class, because normally, like, if one was walk trot 10 and under, then one was the 13 and under, or the other class was 14 to 18. Normally they weren't in the same classes, and they both used the same horse because they were in different classes. So Skippy, or not Skippy, Zippy, excuse me, Zippy is his name. The last year, Lauren's last year in 4-H, 14 to 18, her sister turned 14 and she was 18. And she's like, Mom, I could say that I want Zippy because it's my last year in 4-H. And this is Kelly's first year riding and senior. But I think I'm going to take my barrel horse and train him to jump. And
Okay.
he was 19. So she did, and she actually beat her sister, who was riding the good pleasure horse, on her barrel horse in some of the classes.
Wow. Sounds like she likes a good, challenge.
Yeah, that was cool. But Bailey is such a cool horse that after both of the girls were gone, I used him. I had kids who come over for lessons in the evenings, and then I would take them to shows, and we could go to a show, and he would go. I mentioned he was push style, and he would only go as fast as you push him. In the same show, we would do lead line barrels, where I got my steps in. I'd lead him in a barrel class for time.
Oh my gosh.
He would do walk trot barrels. He would slow lope barrels. He would run fast with a teenager, and he would go even faster with me or my daughter. And he just whatever, and he would do it all in the same show.
Wow.
And he would win every single one of those classes. And that is really something, to have a horse that can do that.
Mm.
So he really made an impression on me. That's one thing. The other thing is Zippy. So Zippy, I mentioned he's going to be 25. I lease him to the hunt seat team at Cornell. He's in his 12th year with the team at Cornell. So the first 4 years he was on the team, Lauren was on the team there. The very first IHSA show, which is Intercollegiate Horse Show Association, the very first IHSA show I went to at Cornell, with it, Lauren made the team, and I went to the show. I'm watching, and the Cornell horses. If you're not familiar with IHSA, you go to one school. Like, there were the 12 different colleges that sent teams to one school, and you draw a name out of a hat, and that's the horse you ride. And you don't even get a chance to warm up on this horse. You get on the horse, you go in the ring, and you jump a course of fences. Okay, so it takes special horses to do this, right? And the classes are only judged on the rider and the rider's abilities. So I'm watching, and the horses that they had at Cornell at that time were either like high level Grand Prix type that had been donated, or these old clunker type trail horses. And there were 3 different levels of jumping classes. In the lowest level of jumping class, they did not have a horse that was right for that level. And I was watching that class with my heart in my throat, just thinking, oh, this is horrible. And I went to the coach after that and I said, I have a horse that you need. And that was Zippy. And so of course there was a little bit of discrimination because he's a red roan Appaloosa in the hunter world.
Oh, well.
But a coach could put any level, there's like 10 different levels in IHSA. He could do all 10 levels. He could do the walk trotters. He could be somebody's first time cantering. He could be somebody's first time jumping. He babysat the novice riders around a whole course.
Mm.
And they love him, obviously. I thought that when Lauren graduated, that would be the end of his time on the team at Cornell, but the coach asks for him to come back every year.
Mhm.
And it actually works out really well for me. Cornell takes great care of him. He gets ridden all year round. He's still competitive at 25. I took him eventing this past summer and I won an event on him. Little low level stuff. He's that kind of horse. You could just take him out and go. I hunter pace with him. He does Western Pleasure. He does ranch. I took him to a breed show this past summer. He'll go hunter style. He'll go breed style. He's just amazing. And the number of young women at Cornell that have furthered their riding career on him while they've been on the team at Cornell. I mean, you figure 12 years on the team there. That's something that's pretty special to me as well. There is a gal who was a neighbor of mine in Hamilton, and she was interested in horses, and she would ride her bike down to my house to ride with me. And when it came time for her to go to college, she picked her college because she wanted to follow Zippy.
Oh,
So she got
oh,
into Cornell. She went to Cornell. She made the team. She became the barn manager for the team, and she's a senior there now. And the she that was a big part of her choice of where to go to college was because she wanted to be with Zippy.
because of Zippy. I love Zippy and I've never met Zippy. No, you know, every once in a while you get so blessed with, I had one myself, Maggie, lucky Maggie, that everyone, if I didn't have a show myself with her on a weekend, my phone, there was like a waiting list. Can we take Maggie? This show's going on. Can we take Maggie? Can we take Maggie? And she was an AQHA World Champion pleasure horse 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But she was that horse. She could show in any division, it didn't matter. Like she was the most amazing horse. And she turned out some amazing equestrians and horsemen, you know. And I would say out of all the horses I've had in my entire life, that one truly left an indelible mark on my heart and soul. And I mean, she's since passed because it was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We had Bailey from
it's
the
my
time he was 10 till he was 26 and he passed. And
wow.
Zippy is now 25 and still going strong. And I've
Oh,
had him since he was 8.
he must be just loving his life. Like he has the best life, you know, clearly doing what he loves and thriving because of it, which is a testament to you and your love for him and the great care that you give your equine buddies. They are family. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. By partnering with Nutrena, it's allowed you to educate, including me and all of our viewers, countless horse owners and retailers. What do you find most rewarding about the work that you do by providing others with education and
I always say, are you kidding? I get paid to talk about horses.
oh my gosh, right?
So one of the things that I feel, I mean, technically my job is in sales, but I don't think of myself as a salesperson. I really do prefer, I always say I'm all about the science. And I really make recommendations based on science. and feel like the science should guide your decisions. So the fact that Cargill has so much science incorporated into our products, I really love that. And yeah, I mean, basically, if you educate people on the reasons, why we do what we do or how, there's a particular benefit in the feed, but how it works in the horse and what it results in the horse, that then the sales will follow.
Right.
So I will say that Cargill is it's a high performing expectation. There are or it's a high performing company with high expectations. So there is pressure to sell. And if you're not good at it, you don't last with the company. So the fact that I've been with the company for 33 years and I have won, some awards for sales,
I'll
uh,
bet.
uh, that that makes me feel good that just by educating people, I can be successful in my career without having to be a high pressure salesperson, because that's not me.
Right. And you're getting behind a product you believe in
Yeah.
completely, and that comes through in your sales. It's just going to happen that way. And I will say, even back, oh dear God, 3 decades ago, when I was doing a lot for Nutrena, Nutrena was the only feed that Shagbark was selling. Um, they put their money where their mouth was. Like I was able to go to Tops and do some nutrition
Yes.
coursework, like, and they paid for it, I mean,
Yep. Over the years, I had put on like a dealer college, we would call it, where we invited our feed retailers to come and do like a 2-day school. And one time I did one at Morrisville College, one I did at Houghton College, and we were right out in the classroom in the horse barn where we could actually do hands-on with the horses and bring in a bunch of different hay samples and evaluate hay and look at different feeds and actually incorporate the professors from the college into our training. So yeah.
love it, love it. It's no wonder you've been with them for so long. Now we're
I
gonna,
also have to say there's pretty good perks with, like, I get to go work at Quarter Horse Congress. I get to work at
oh,
Equine Affair. One year I worked at the National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas at the Nutrena booth. So
wow, I'm kicking myself in the butt because there was that option decades ago to actually work for Nutrena. I was a musician as well, so guess which way I went. I still had horses, but I was also in a band. Okay. We're gonna switch back to Louie and Zippy. It sounds like their personalities are different as
hmm.
well as their disciplines. How do you balance their training and care, and what have they taught you about adaptability as a rider?
It's one of the most interesting things I did this past summer is I took both of them eventing. And Louis had never done anything like that before. Um, Zippy has done it, not a lot, but some. I Eventing is something I do like once or twice a year for fun. It's not my main thing. It's funny, I have a dressage saddle and it usually gets used 2 days a year. You get the day before the event and the day of the event.
Let me dust that up.
But I will say I use dressage in my everyday training, um, because we want to, you know, for a barrel horse, if you're going to turn a barrel properly, you need to be able to move their shoulders. You need to be able to move their hips. You need to have control over where each foot falls, which is dressage, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I use a lot of dressage training, even though I don't ride in my dressage saddle a lot.
Love it.
But when I got Louis, I could just tell he's a super athletic horse. And I mentioned that he's a quarter horse, but he looks like a thoroughbred. So he just has this look about him that I think he's going to be a really great hunter someday. Even though his breeding is for barrel racing and all his training has been for barrel racing, I enjoy doing a little bit of hunter stuff. And Zippy is 25 now, and I'm not sure, how many more years I'll be able to keep jumping him. So I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need help. If I'm going to be safe about it and do right by the horse, I need to go for lessons. So I did find a trainer nearby, and I was trucking there about once a week for most of the summer so that I started him over fences properly and also got lessons for myself so that I was safe. Because as I mentioned, he's a big, powerful horse. He's a very forward ride, and he's a handful, and sometimes I'm a little scared of him. So it was good to have the help and not try to do it by myself.
Mhm.
So I knew I was doing it right, and I was not not interfering with him trying to do what's right as well. So
What does Louis think about this?
he likes it.
Yeah.
But he's very forward. So Zippy is laid back, easygoing, and you need to push him to the fences. And Louis, you need to sit back and kind of be like settle and steady, 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 sit back and then jump. Whereas Zippy, I'm pushing to the jumps. So I ride them for jumping completely the opposite.
Sure.
Um, but I decided I've been taking Zippy to a little event each year, every year for the last 4 or 5 years up in Barneveld at the Barneveld Horsemen's Association. And it's a very nice little event with a 2 foot beginner novice division. And I used to jump 2.6 with Zippy a lot, but you know what? I don't lesson over fences regularly anymore. And so I just sometimes I don't always feel secure jumping 2.6, but 2 foot is no big deal. I love 2 foot. The 2 foot is fun, right? And we're doing this to have fun. So so I love this little 2 foot division. And then the Barneveld group, they actually are trying to get more people started in eventing. So they actually introduced an 18-inch division, which I thought, oh, that would be good for Louis. However, I looked at the dressage test, and the dressage test was only walk trot, and Louis's canter is just to die for. And I thought, well, it's no fun to do a dressage test that is only walk trot. So I entered Louis in the 2 foot division as well. So I had two horses in the same division,
Oh my gosh.
and it wasn't a very big event. So I did have to do had to ride two dressage tests and then two stadium and then two cross country, and two very different horses.
Good for you.
But
Wow.
fortunately, I was able to take my trainer who I've been going to for jumping lessons. She was able to go with me that day. And then I have a friend who comes to ride. So one of the things you asked me about how I ride the horses differently is I usually try to get both horses ridden at the same time with someone else on Zippy. I invite a friend to come ride
Ah,
with
smart.
me. And I have several friends that I have met, doing different things that I'll say, oh, would you like to come ride with me? And then I'll saddle up Zippy for that friend. And then I'll kind of almost teach them a riding lesson while I'm riding Louis. And I'll work Louis in the ring and then give that person some tips on how to ride Zippy. And we'll work in the ring for, half an hour or so. And then we'll go out on the trails
Oh,
afterwards,
that is perfect.
go around a couple fields. So that way both horses get worked at the same time.
Smart. I love
And
it.
then I have a friend to ride with. So one of those friends, I had a friend, it was interesting. I go to a chiropractor once a week, and the chiropractor one day handed me a business card and said, this is a girl. She's new to the area. She would like to make friends, and she likes to ride horses. And I immediately thought of you. So he handed me her card, and I had her card on my desk for a couple weeks and just hadn't had a chance to call her. I totally meant to call her, one day I went to the chiropractor at a different time than I normally do. And when you slide your card at the chiropractor, there's a speaker that comes on and it says your name and tells you which table to go to. And there was a girl in there, and I actually brought my puppy in with me, and she's petting my puppy. And then it said her name, and I'm like, "You're Megan?" I'm like, "I've had your business card on my desk and I haven't had a chance to call you." I'm like, "I've been wanting to invite you to come horseback riding with me." And so it's just things like that that the universe puts people together.
Serendipity.
Yes. And so she started coming and riding once a week. And then she was able to go to that event with me because I told her, I said, I've never ever have charged anybody to ride my horses. I've never charged even the years when I was teaching lots of lessons at my house, that kids always traded riding for chores. I never charged anybody for lessons or riding. So anyway, Megan's always like, "Well, what can I do to help you?" And it's like, "Hey, I'm going to this event and I'm taking both horses, and I could really use a person to like babysit Zippy while I'm riding Louie and vice versa." Because
Yeah.
Zippy also will not stay tied to the trailer by himself if his buddy is gone. My old trailer had dents all down the side of the trailer
Gosh.
from if we took Andy and Bailey away for the barrel racing section, and if we left Zippy at the trailer, he destroyed all kinds of things on the trailer. For as good as he
Oh.
is for everything else, he's bad about that. So yeah, so Megan came with me that day, and she was happy to hang out with Zippy whenever I wasn't riding him, and I didn't have to leave him tied at the trailer while I was riding Louie.
Perfect. It was meant to be.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I mentioned that I got married in June, and
Congratulations. A little
thank
late,
you.
but
My
you're so
husband,
neat.
he did not grow up around horses, but he does love horses, and he helps me with the chores. And so Zippy is a very good mount for him. So occasionally we go riding together, and
Ah.
Zippy's the kind of mount that you can pretty much put anybody on him.
Yeah, he's the husband horse.
Yeah.
Awesome. See, but you just can't tie him to a trailer.
Right. Well, if he travels by himself,
Oh
he's fine.
dear.
It's only when he travels with his buddies that you can't leave him by himself with the trailer. So,
Little baby.
yeah.
For horse owners who feel or might feel overwhelmed by the variety of feed options, and there's a lot now, there are a lot, what practical advice can you offer to help them make the best decision for their feeding needs for their horses?
So I will tell you, like every feed company has an economy feed line, a midline feed line, a premium feed, and then super premium feeds.
Mm.
So you kind of need to decide where you fall in that category. And part of it is price, because each of those economy, midline, premium, and super premium all have different price points. And then you definitely get what you pay for. So,
Oh, we
um,
lost. I'm going to have you back up,
oh yeah,
and I don't have to repeat the question. I'm just going to have just act like I just asked you that question and start from the beginning. You froze.
sure.
Mm.
So every feed company has economy feeds, midline feeds, premium feeds, and super premium feeds. And they're all going to be different both in price and in nutrition. So you have to kind of decide, you need to decide what your horse's needs are and what your goals are. And if your horse is an easy keeper or a hard keeper, if it's growing or if it's just maintenance, not doing much, or if it's an older horse, then they have special needs. So if you buy the cheapest grain out there and then you're not happy with what your horse looks like, some people will buy a cheap grain and then they buy all kinds of supplements to put with it to try to
Right.
fix issues. If you just bought a better feed, a premium feed instead of a midline feed or an economy feed, that might have everything that you're getting from the supplements might already be in there. And actually, sometimes if you pencil it out, a cheap feed with supplements can be more expensive than a premium feed that already has
Absolutely.
what you need in it.
100%.
So I think that would be one of the questions when you're looking for a feed for your horse is, somebody say, oh, well, I feed stock and stable and it's only $12 a bag. For if you're complaining because the feed you're feeding is $30 a bag. Well, calorie wise, we need the more expensive feeds are going to be higher in calories, and higher in vitamin and mineral fortification. And some of the bells and whistles that I talked about earlier, as far as supplemental amino acids, prebiotics and probiotics, the higher added fat levels, they're going to be in the premium feeds, but they're not in the economy feeds. So as far as, yes, somebody might be paying a lower amount for a different bag of feed, but it might not have in it what you need for your horse to look good and look the way you want it to or perform the way you want it to.
Sure. That makes perfect sense.
So when you go to the feed store, I would figure out which ones are the economy ones, which ones are the midline ones, which ones are the premium ones, and then the super premium. Like for me, I'm very competitive with Louie. I'm going to the World Championships, right? So I feed Proforce. Proforce is our super premium line. For Nutrena, stock and stable is the economy. Triumph is our midline. Safe Choice is our premium, and Proforce is our super premium.
Kind of like gasoline and octane. Right? I'm not, unfortunately, I wouldn't mind if I could, but I can't put regular gasoline in my car. He likes the highest octane available. There you have it. But if I don't, where am I going to be? I'm going to be at the mechanics all the time, right? Gee, my pistons are misfiring and she is very rumbly and there's a problem and I don't get good gas mileage. What are you putting in it? Oh, okay. No, absolutely. One time I'm such a geek that one time I did. I broke everything down in an Excel spreadsheet just to see where I was wasting my money on supplements and where, yes, it's so much better and easier and actually cost effective to just use a premium feed.
Yeah.
So,
So an exception to that would be like the glucosamine and chondroitin supplements. We are not able to put those in our horse feeds. I mentioned earlier about the AFCO, is the American Association of Feed Control Officials.
mhm.
And one of the AFCO guidelines is no animal products in horse feed. Well, glucosamine and chondroitin are derived from animals. So that's why we do not have them in our horse. Because a lot of times, you can buy amino acid supplements, but we have the amino acids in the horse feed. You can buy fat supplements, but we put fat, prebiotics and probiotics, postbiotics. We have that in the feed, the marine source calcite. But the glucosamine and the chondroitin, we're not going to do that. There are some other companies out there doing it, but it really doesn't follow the guidelines.
Yeah,
That
that
should be
makes
bought as a
sense.
separate supplement.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Well, when you're not working or riding, Heather, you enjoy shooting sporting plays and spending time with your family. I can even find time. Oh my gosh, I'm exhausted listening to you. How do these activities bring balance to your busy life and equestrian pursuits?
It's kind of funny. I mentioned about how I just got married. Um, so I have a good friend whose daughter went to school with my two daughters, and she owns a gun club, Vernon National Shooting Preserve. And one of my coworkers in Cargill, a dairy rep, is a member there, and he had his retirement party there. I had never been there before, but I went to this retirement party and I saw my friend Darcy, and she said, Heather, what happened to you? You disappeared. And I had moved. I had left my farm and I was living with my mother, boarding my horses. And I told her about that. She said, Heather, we have a ladies group who shoots here on Thursday nights, and they're shooting that night. So you should come shoot with us. And I was in a point in my life where I was kind of on my own, starting over, rebuilding, doing the healing and growth, and looking for new experiences. So I said, I have a riding lesson tonight. And I did not realize that where my horses were boarded was only 10 minutes from this gun club. And she's like, that's just 10 minutes away. Come back after your riding lesson. So I said, okay. I said, but I've never shot a shotgun before. And she says, it's okay. We have an instructor. So I go have my riding lesson. I come back. I get there a little bit late. Everybody else is out. All the ladies are out on the course. And I texted Darcy, I'm here. And she has her husband come in on the 4x4 and get me. He takes me out on the sporting clay course. There's 16 different stations and different sporting clays at different stations. And they're at station 12. So he takes me there and he comes up and the instructor's name is Ziggy. And he says, here, Ziggy, got a new one for you. Never shot a gun before. And Ziggy's like, step right over here, young lady. And he puts a vest on me and shows me how to use the shotgun and what has me watch a sporting clay target fly. And he has me shoot the gun without a target. And then the first time I ever shot, I actually broke the target, which I thought I thought you had to like practice for a long time to be able to do that. But one of the things that struck me is that Ziggy started talking to me about shooting the gun the same way that I teach riding lessons, which is very much about how to use your body. So the first thing he said, put your left foot forward. I want you to put your weight on your left foot. Your shoulders down. I want the gun right here. I want you to turn your head and use your eyes, which is all how I teach riding, right? Your weight this way, your heels down. Use your eyes, look where you want to go, right? So I just felt in the fact that I broke the first target because I did exactly what he told me to. So put the gun down, throw my arms around him, like, oh, I was so excited because I never thought I would actually break the target. And I did. And so we went on to a few more stations, and the rest of the ladies group was kind of ahead of us. And he and I were just going. And that night, I went with the ladies, and we had wine and a little food and stuff. And then he said, I always usually take a ride around the property in the evening. Would you like to have a little tour of the property? So I went over to my friend Darcy, and I'm like, this guy Ziggy, like, well, first of all, I grew up on a dairy farm and I'm Irish, right? I had always dated dairy farmers and my family's very, very Irish. Ziggy is Francesco Antonio Zagarelli, and he talks like he's straight out of a Godfather movie. His father actually was in the mafia, and he owns a barber shop, an Italian barber shop in Utica. I had never met anyone like him before. So I go over to Darcy and I'm like, hey, Darcy, this guy Ziggy, like, is it safe to like go off in the woods with? And she's like, oh yeah, that's just Ziggy. Well, I didn't realize Ziggy was actually, it was the pandemic. So he was living, they shut down all the barber shops. So he was staying at Ron and Darcy's house with them out by the gun club. So very, very close with them. And yeah, Ziggy gave me a tour of the property that night. That a week later, I came back for another shooting lesson.
I think I know where this is going.
So that was May of 21. And so January 23, we got engaged at Station 12. And then this past June 24, we got married at Station 12, right?
Oh God,
Right where
girl,
we met.
I'm literally tearing up.
Yeah.
That's
So
beautiful. It's beautiful because imagine if you had said no, no, I have a riding lesson, and you know what I mean? Like tried to worm your way out of not going. You know what I mean? Like make an excuse and not go. And instead you just did it.
yeah.
And look
And
where
I
you
had been
are.
single since like October of 19, and this was May of 21. And I never wanted to go on like any dating websites or
Oh, I hear you. I've been single for 3 years. and I've not been on a date. I haven't even attempted to, but I'm listening to this going, "May- maybe there's some hope after all. I think I'm gonna have to join some clubs.
Yeah.
Pickleball it is. Although
Well,
I do enjoy shooting, so I might want to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I
Oh,
enjoy it because now it's a competitive thing, which I told you I'm very competitive,
of
and you
course.
have to be focused.
Yeah,
But you can, it's outside, and we do it in all kinds of weather. Shooting a shotgun and knowing how to shoot a shotgun, I think is very empowering.
sure. Yeah.
Um, so I feel kind of badass, when I'm out there breaking targets left and right.
Yeah.
But we have a side by side, and our puppy goes along with us. They do pheasant hunting at this club too. And so I ended up buying a German short hair pointer because who's going to be trained for pheasant hunting. I took her out um, a couple days ago and just walked the fields looking for some pheasants. So that's fun. It's outdoors. Wholesome. To me, guns are wholesome and used in that way. I know some people uh, don't like the gun aspect of it, but my experience at this club with everyone there is extremely safe with the guns and
Course,
that
of
kind of thing.
course. We have to not focus on the guns. We have to focus on the people that are using the guns, when they're like gotta outlaw them and ban them and that. It's not that I grew up. My father was an avid hunter and I've shot a 357 Magnum and you're right, it is empowering. Um, but there is a way to do it safely. And it's just, guns in the wrong hands are guns in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
Period, right? I'm
So it's
sorry,
a
I'm jumping
sport.
all over.
The way it is there is a sport, and they have competitions there, and I become a trapper. So, which is like an
What's a trapper?
official. You sit and you'll push the button for the clays to come out, and then you actually keep score. So,
Oh, so you're doing like what Ziggy was doing with you.
well, I'm not an instructor though.
Um,
But he's an instructor.
oh,
So,
you will be. You will be next year. Just put that on your list, Heather.
but it's a very nice group of people that I enjoy hanging out with too. So,
Oh, what a beautiful ending to our interview. I love it. Thank you so much, Heather. Is there anything I didn't touch on that you'd like to add? I hope I got to everything.
at some point I was going to make notes and I never did, but I sent you those couple things that I thought would be cool to talk about, which worked out really well. So it
Excellent.
should be good. I was
I
thinking I should send you a picture of the sunrise from the barn door.
Please do send me all the images you want to include. I'm going to have a whole montage with your introduction to this
Yeah.
video. So if our viewers have gotten to this point in the interview, you've already seen the montage.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the Backyard Horse Enthusiast. I am so grateful that our lives connected at Equine Affair, and I look forward to updates from you in the future.
Well, if you ever want to come out, you're welcome to ride Zippy.
Oh my gosh, hang on. I'll be there in like 48 hours. I've got a few things I got to get done. Tomorrow's a road race, but I'll be there. No, I appreciate that. And I will be hitting the road. So I definitely would like to interview you in your location. I want to see that museum that your grandfather was named after. I want to see that dairy farm. I want to see the John Deere. And I want to see where you and Ziggy have started a new life with your horses in the backyard.
Where I live right now is really close to Vernon Downs racetrack. So there's actually a lot of horse activity in this neighborhood because we're so close to Vernon Downs. Yeah.
We're going to put that on the schedule.
Cool. And one thing I did not get to talk about is the whole 3D, 4D format for the barrel racing, because I don't know if people understand what that is.
Well, tell us, we still have some time here.
Okay. So, because earlier I made a comment about I went from being a 3D rider to being a 1D rider. So in NBHA, which stands for National Barrel Horse Association, the whole premise on that is that the same people don't win the money every week, right? Because you've got people who are really fast. Your same people tend to always win. So instead of just paying money to the winners, the NBHA came up with this 3D or sometimes 4D, or like at the World Championships, it was a 5D format where they pay out money for different levels. Everything is based on the winning time. So say you're going to pay 6 places. You have your winning time, and then your first 6 places all get money. Then they add half a second to the winning time, and that is your 2D, which is your second division. And then they pay 6 places for the people who are half a second off the winning time. Then they add another half a second, and that's the 3D. So 3D is 1 second off the winning time, and they pay money to 6 places. And 4D would be another half second, which would be 1.5 seconds off the winning time, and then they pay money to those people. Nice. So they carry this through. It's not just for paying money at each race. It carries through the points for the whole year, and your year-end awards are all 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D.
I've heard Fallon Taylor talk about that here and there, and I'm not in that world, so it's just like, oh, okay, well, I don't know.
Right.
Thank you.
So you could see somebody post something on Facebook. They're all excited because they won the 4D. Well, and when I didn't know much about it, I used to think to myself, why would you post that? Like the 4D is like not that good. But actually, when you have like 200 horses in the class and everybody is so close, 4D is 1.5 seconds off the winning time.
It's a big deal, I think.
It's really not much.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to be, if you've got 200 people in a race and the same 10 people win the money every single race you go to, what fun is that? So I'll tell you, when I was in Georgia, there was almost 1,000 people in the open. And they were taking 250 people into the finals. So basically a quarter of the people were going to make it into the finals. So on your first go, they took the top 25 people in each D. So the top 25 fastest, then they added half a second to the winning time, took 25 people, add another half second. So 1 second off the winning time, they took 25 people. Okay. And they did it for 5D. So it was actually up to 2 seconds off of the winning time. Then they had the second go around where they took another 25 people from each division. So if you didn't already make it into the finals on the first go, you got a second chance. So they ended up with 50 people out of 5 different divisions. That's how they got 250 people for the finals.
Wow.
So 2 different times. And then there's a redemption round. If you still didn't make it, you could run in the redemption round where they took 1 person from each division. So the second round and the redemption round, I missed getting in the finals one time by 19 1,000ths of a second, and the other time by 16 1,000ths of a second. Too fast. I was at the bottom of the 3D. I missed winning the 4D by either 19 1,000ths of a second or 16 1,000ths of a second. Yeah. Which not only did I miss like making it into the finals, but I missed winning money. I was 16 1,000ths of a second too fast. So like my mom doesn't really understand this. She's like, well, how can you do? She goes, you always fall in the cracks. What can you do different so you don't fall in the crack? That's what they call that, is falling in the cracks. And I'm thinking to myself, for 16 1,000ths of a second, what am I going to squeeze my butt cheeks a little before I cross the finish?
Like, that's what it was. You forgot. Squeeze your butt cheeks.
No, maybe I should have. If I should have, it would have been like a tiny half halt, maybe 61 thousandths of a second slower, right?
Yep, yeah, there you go.
But it's all, I mean, as long as you keep all three barrels up, because if you don't, if you knock a barrel, it doesn't, it's a no time. So yeah, like I got faster as I was in Georgia. My slowest run, well, I started at a 17.6. Then my next run was a 16.5, but I knocked the barrel. Then my next run, I had a muscle tighten up in my leg and I got a 17.8. And then after that, I got better. Then I went from a 17.8, I got a 16.3, then I got a 16.2, then I got a 16.1, and my very last run was a 15.9, but I knocked the barrel. But so if I had stayed at like 16.3, I would have made it into the final, but because I got faster, I put myself in a different division.
Yep. Oh,
So it's like as long as you keep all the barrels up, after that, it's almost like playing the lottery
yeah,
where
sounds it.
you where you fall. And if, as you're running, you've got, hundreds of horses going, it's everything is based on the winning time. So that winning time could change. And
True.
it could screw up because for a long time, like say 14.9 was winning. So all of your divisions are based on that 14.9. And then somebody goes in and runs like a 14.6 and it screws up all the divisions. Because that happened one of the days in one of the rounds.
Oh,
So it's a lot of fun. But
it better be,
I know, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Otherwise,
But so
why?
even the people like in the 3D and the 4D still win a lot of money. Not as much as the people who win the 1D. But it's pretty cool. So in 1992 was the first year that I worked at Quarter Horse Congress. That was the first year the NBHA came into being. And the NBHA booth was right next to the Nutrena booth. So I was listening to the NBHA people explain it 100 times, every
Yeah.
came by. It was brand new at the time, and they make it so the same people don't win the money all the time. And now it's huge and it's growing. The sport is growing and new barrel races are popping up. And now slot races are becoming a big thing where it's like a $500 entry fee, but they're paying out and they cap the number of entries. And they say like only 100 people can enter, but it's a $500 entry fee. But like 24 people are going to win money and it's big money. It's like thousands of dollars. So as long as you keep the barrels up, but again, only a quarter of the people are going to win money. 3/4 of people are not, you know?
Wow.
So yeah.
Ah, well, thank you for that tidbit of information. We enjoy
Yeah.
being educated for those of us that are barrel racing novices.
The bigger shows, they'll have two timer things. And one will show your time and one will show the time that's winning.
Ah,
So one of the pictures that I had posted on my Facebook was showed like a 14.7 and then my 15.9. So it's pretty cool.
wow. Well, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We so appreciate it.
And
And
Happy
thank
New Year.
Happy New Year. That's right. That's tomorrow. That's tonight,
Night.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to today is a holy day of obligation. So I have to go to mass tonight. So I have barn chores and then I'll go to church and no one will sit next to me
Oh,
because I'm gonna smell like a horse.
that's
There's a
okay.
reason for my madness.
Some people like that.
Some do. I do. I don't smell it. I always end up going to the grocery store after I've gone and mucked stalls, and
Yeah.
it's like, why is everybody keeping a wide berth around me? Oh, oh, okay. I love the smell.
Well, yes, definitely let me know if you're coming to Central New York. I'm
I
between
will.
Utica and Syracuse.
Absolutely. I most definitely will. I've got a list of everywhere I plan on visiting, and I'm putting you on that list, Heather.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.